Welcome to the Healthy Perspective Podcast with your host, chiropractor, entrepreneur, mentor, and author, Dr. Chris Bowman. He'll break down and extract the secret sauce behind his own success and the success of some of the top leaders in every category and from around the world. Get ready for your weekly mental adjustment because shift is going to happen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Perspective Podcast. I am so happy to be with you today. We are bringing the best of the best onto this podcast. And it's so fun watching the people that I've brought on the podcast and following them on social media and see where they've gone really since we've signed on. And today is going to be no different. We're bringing Mr. Howard Brown on before his book launch, before everybody wants to interview him, and I'm so thankful that we get this opportunity to share. Now, Howard is an author, speaker, podcaster, two-time stage 4 cancer survivor, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and healthcare and community advocate. His book is due in May, mid-May, late May, hopefully mid-May, and it's called Shining Brightly, and we are so excited to read it. I'm going to get a sneak peek, and I'll share with you guys my thoughts. So, Howard, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris. It's just really, as you know, writing a book is a labor of love, and I did that over COVID. I did that while recovering, and still, going through maintenance and cancer surveillance, and I did it over Zoom. I actually have done 173 Zoom interviews to get transcripts. Had over 150 people interviewed in my book that are part of my life. And that inspired me, mentored me, and the same. And then we made those into chapters in a manuscript, and we're getting closer. We're hitting the starting line, as I say. So I'm very excited for that.
I love it. I can't wait to read it. Before we kind of dig into your story, well, actually, we'll do this after we dig into your story. I'd love to just hear, starting from maybe the first time, because I'm sure cancer is like it doesn't define you, but it's the cornerstone of your life trajectory. You got diagnosed and you're like, okay, like I'm not invincible. Like, here we go, And so I'd love to kind of talk about, that catalyst moment. And then maybe after we dive into that, we can kind of launch into, people I found kind of go two routes, working in healthcare myself, when they get diagnosed with something like that. Either they go I did everything wrong and just kind of fading, into oblivion, kind of playing the victim, or they go the other way and they say like, all right, like it's time to take control of my life like never before. And because I recognize how fragile life is and how selfish I've been living and how much I want to live now for other people. And so I'd love to really see if we can flesh that mindset out. Like, what triggered you to go the way that you're going now versus kind of fading back, playing the victim, all eyes and attention and sorrow and whatnot on you. So why don't you go back to the first time you got diagnosed with cancer and just kind of walk us through your story.
So I appreciate that. And there's no straight answer for anyone. The paths are diverse, I will tell you. And I had a little bit of both. I was 23 and a half years old. Wow. I had a little spot on my cheekbone. Didn't think it was anything. And this is 1989, and we still had payphones. So I called my mom and dad. I was driving out to Ohio for a promotion, moving away from home after college. And it ended up, I thought it was a pimple, a cyst, nothing. I kept working out. I dove right into my new job. My mom came out a few weeks later and helped me get settled into a condo. And she's like, that thing looks terrible. And we didn't know anybody in Dayton, Ohio. And I just kept working. I'm typically a workaholic. I'm an entrepreneur. So I ignored it. And I ended up flying back to Boston for a bank conference that I was speaking at. And by this time, it was purple and starting to look like a golf ball from a marble. There was something wrong. I was wearing glasses at the time. My glasses were crooked.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad fooled me. We were going to go play tennis. And instead, he took me to a community hospital and said, let's go check this thing out. And I was like, okay. So I went in, emergency room doctor saw me, looked at it. Here's some erythromycin. You'll be fine. Okay, great. Yeah. Well, I went to do my speech in Boston. I didn't feel great. might have been the erythromycin, but I wasn't feeling good. So I went back home that afternoon after the conference, and my dad took me right back to the hospital. Same guy was on duty. And this time he had another doctor with him. I didn't know who he was. He didn't identify himself, but he kind of was feeling around, the lymph and all that stuff. And he says, we don't know what you have, but we're going to biopsy it. So they took one biopsy. He goes, wait in the lobby. Come back in. He goes, we need more. Took another one. And my dad the next morning dropped me off at the airport. I went on with my life. Little did I know that my parents were just freaking out because, the unknown. Also, a couple of weeks went by. We didn't hear anything. So I get called back to Boston. They don't tell us why. We don't have any news. And we show up at this community hospital and they said, you're going into Dana-Farber Cancer Institute this afternoon at 2 p.m. And I didn't even think I heard those words. I really didn't. What do you say? What are you talking about? I'm in great shape. I'm a college basketball player. I'm a jock. I work hard. I play hard. And we drove in that day, and I was in a suit and tie. My dad's in a suit. My mom's dressed up like we're going out to, a nice dinner. And at that time, this Harvard fellow, Eric Rubin, and one of the founders of lymphoma chemotherapy, Dr. George Canellis, I sat in his desk and I heard him. He said, you have, stage 4E, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, super aggressive. And then I didn't hear him. I looked back out of the corner of my eye. My dad is like stone cold. My mom's bawling her eyes out. And I looked at the corner of this room and I see Eric Rubin, and I'm just staring at him going, what is he talking about? Because he was younger. And so I think I first started out in denial and just deer in the headlights. And they ran a battery of tests on me. I'm sitting there in Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, the world-renowned research hospital. And on the other side of the kind of the waiting room is the Jimmy Fund. And these are little kids that are going through all types of cancer, and they're just playing games. So I walked over there and sat down and started playing games with some kids because it was surreal. I really didn't have a clue. And remember, no cell phones, no computers. They did a boatload of testing on me. And then I came back, and the surprise that you will learn in the book is that I was so scared. I was going to go into the infusion room, and they canceled my first chemotherapy. My liver function test was too high. But it was God-driven because Eric Rubin says, you're taking a road trip to the cryogenic center. I go, you just told me I'm going to die. And they were like, no, what else you got to do today? I went, and 11 years later, another miracle besides living and a bone marrow transplant for my twin sister. My beautiful daughter, Emily, was born frozen sperm 11 years later. So wow. I don't know if there's a higher power, but I sure believe in one. So that was really it. And then I got my act together because I actually said, I think, I have more to live for. And I didn't do it alone. My mom was a #1 caregiver. I was immunosuppressed. And I started to build my massive network of supporters, prayer cheerleaders then. Basically had my bone marrow transplant in May 24th, and my sister's bone marrow was 100% match. And wow. I walked out of there 30 days later out of isolation and started a clinical trial called interleukin-2 that strengthened my natural killer cells. And then I got off all treatment that December, went to my grandparents' 50th anniversary in Florida. And then I went to stay with a friend in Florida because I didn't want the cold New England winter. And then I moved to California in about June. I transferred jobs and I wanted warm weather. Yeah. That was cancer one, as quick as I can tell it.
Right. Wow. What an incredible story. And it's almost cliche in a sense of like 23, no thought, cancer wasn't even in the back of your mind, let alone, like a present, thing. And I can just picture like if it was like a movie, like they start saying something and then everything just kind of like numbs, your ears are ringing and it's just like, what? Like, is this me? And so that's such an incredible experience to have and to draw from, because it's like, how can somebody tell you something worse at this point? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've been told like your days are numbered, but then putting it in perspective, that's what this podcast is called. It's like, I mean, why don't we take that mindset everywhere? Like, what can somebody tell you that can take away who you are or what you're doing or your purpose or your motivation? It's like, If we're meant for something bigger anyways, that just put, it's like, no matter what anybody said about you, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die making an impact on people, but you think about it, it's like humans have 100% die rate anyways, at some point, you know what I mean? No human has survived, ever. Eventually that's going to be our fate. So why do we live life selfishly? It's just like, we put it into perspective, like, oh, it's shorter than I thought, so I got to squeeze it all in, I love that perspective of people that have been told that, where it's like, never take a day for granted, never take a minute for granted. Like, we got work to do, we got a life to change, we got a world to change.
There's a story in the book. I did a support group. My mom thought it was the greatest thing, and I actually told her, because we would drive into Boston, and we're already driving into Boston, from Framingham, about 22 miles out, a lot for blood transfusions and checkups, and then I stayed there at Dana-Farber. They don't even take patients now, just strictly research. And I was part of a group called Stepping Stones, and it was after cancer, of how to take the next steps, big steps, little steps, backward steps. And they split originally the caregivers and the patients. Not the first session. The second session is we all sat together, and my mom's like, "This is great. You're talking about your feelings." Yeah. And I was like, "Mom," I said, this group isn't for me. And she's like, no, you have to stick it out. You haven't talked to anyone about it. You have to share. I said, Mom, this isn't what breaks me up. And this isn't what's going to move me forward. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to move on, with my life and build it back up again, building Humpty Dumpty back again, for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I ended up at the last meeting, because I stayed 6 meetings. That was my promise to my mom. And I gave everybody mirrors. And that mirror said Dana-Farber Cancer Institute Stepping Stones. And in the mirror, when you opened it up, it says, "I like me." Because I sat there and I was like, these people hate themselves. They're just complaining, and they don't like themselves. They don't like where they're at. And I'm all about change. And, this is what, you go to school, number one for entrepreneurship, called Babson College. You got to pivot. You got to pick up the pieces. Yep. When you get knocked down again, it's time to put a Band-Aid on the boo-boo and get up. And this is a big boo-boo, but I'm not going to be led of it. I'm not telling everyone to take my path, but I was ready to get busy living, as they say in the Shawshank Redemption. And,
right.
That's what I did. So I looked in that mirror, and everyone, I do like some parts about myself, and I can take positive steps. And if I can't do it for me, I can do it for someone else. And so back to your original statement and question, is that why don't we do that from the get-go? We get lost in a very noisy world. We get lost in a materialistic, very, very noisy world. That's my quick summation on the psychology of why don't we actually just act with kindness all the time?
Yeah, I agree. And since the 90s, you talk about before computers and cell phones and those sort of things. I mean, you talk about the levels of distraction now. I mean, it's almost an art to focus, versus back then it was like, it wasn't really something that we had to think twice about. So you go into remission.
Yep, 26 years. I moved to California. I'm 136 pounds and bald. I go back to work for NCR Corporation, and it was just great. I was so grateful because I got warm weather, but I became a workaholic again. I said sweat the small stuff. I started to sweat the small stuff. Your memory becomes a thing where I couldn't even remember, certain parts of the treatment. The mind blocks them out, and I rebuilt my life again. And I was playing basketball, my happy place. I was working really, really hard. I was meeting friends. And as it would have it, a friend of mine on the basketball court said, "Hey, go to the Jewish Community Federation. And there's a young adult program. It's once a month, 7 to 10, good speakers, lots of cool people, and really good looking Jewish women." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I did go to that. And I met Lisa, now 27 and a half years at one of those meetings. And it's a Hollywood script. We got married overlooking the beach, and I continued my life. And the only time cancer really came back in that 26-year period was we actually had to fly the frozen sperm from Newton Wellesley Hospital out to a cryogenic center in San Jose, California, and start the in vitro process called ICSI, which was crazy at that time. This is 2001. And 8 eggs, they chose the best 4. They chose the best swimmers. They defrosted them. And our little kidsicle, Emily, was born as a healthy baby in August of 2001. And she's now 20 at the University of Michigan. And
amazing.
So, what a blessing. What a major blessing. So my twin sister saves my life for a bone marrow transplant. And I get a daughter through frozen sperm and the miracles of medical technology. I mean,
it's incredible.
You can't make this stuff up, and I didn't. It really happened to me.
Right.
So
that was cancer the first time.
I was in Silicon Valley. I was in Silicon Valley at that time when Emily was born, and I was just working way too hard.
Yeah.
Life was out of balance for me again.
Yeah.
Work hard, play hard, and I was feeling good. So we moved back to Michigan. My twin sister moved to Michigan. We wanted the families to raise together. The cost of living in Michigan, it's just way different than California. And I had a little stomach stuff, but I've always had a little stomach stuff, irritable bowel, indigestion, stuff like that, reflux. But at 50 years old, I go to my internal medicine guy, David Rossman, and he said, Howard, time for your colonoscopy. You're 50. So I made an appointment. I had the flu, so I canceled it. And then on June 4th of 2016, I went in and my wife was holding my hand. And this Dr. Philip Goldmeyer, nicest guy ever. I looked up, I said, Doc, everything's great. And he said, no, I found something. And when I find something in your cecum, pretty far up there, it's usually bad news. Yeah, it was bad news. It was stage 3 colorectal cancer, an immediate colon resection of 13 inches of colon, chemo port put in, and starting the rock'em sock'em chemo in August of that summer.
Wow. So now, for the second time, you've been told bad news. How did you handle it this time versus last time?
Well, we're in a digital age, as we just spoke about, so much easier to find information, although Dr. Google I don't recommend, but lots more support groups. I belong to one called Paltown, another one called Blue Hope Nation, Colon Cancer Coalition. I know the colon cancer world right now, and I started to do my research. This time around, I was not a deer in the headlights. I actually had the mental toughness to become, as I call it in the book, I actually became, a Marine, getting ready for battle. I knew I was in for a battle. And so I was building up the resources. I had Facebook. I was able to communicate instead of having the busy signal of an analog phone. And start to prepare that way. And unfortunately, the first round of 12 chemos was rock'em sock'em, didn't work. I relapsed.
Oh, wow.
Another colon resection, a failed clinical trial. And then I was at the soccer championships in Dallas. My daughter played U16 goalie, and they won the national championship. And I was feeling bad all week. I didn't say a word to anybody, trying to be a tough guy. Mm-hmm. And my wife finally, called my doctor, who called me at like 6 a.m. in Dallas. And he said, this is Dr. Rich Zachman of Beaumont Hospital in Michigan. He says, get your butt to Baylor Hospital. And it's right 5 minutes away from you. They got a brand new facility there. I said, I'll do it after the semifinals. He said, no, get there now. I go, no. I had a couple mothers take me. One was a former nurse. And unfortunately, bad things. I became metastatic stage 4. The colon cancer had spread to liver, peritoneum, omentum, small bowel, and who knew elsewhere. And that, when I came back, that was really a dark period again. I let myself get depressed for a short period of time because I'm down at Karmanos Cancer Institute, downtown Detroit, and this guy, Tony Shields, he says, you have stage 4 metastatic. I said, well, I'm 53. I'm an athlete. I have the will, the attitude. I said, how many guys make it? And he said, the percentages are single digits. And it was 4%. He goes, rarely. And he walked out of the room on me.
Oh,
and
my
I sat
gosh.
there in a room all alone going, rarely, man. Oh my God. I said, I'm not going to get to see my daughter graduate high school. I said, oh my God, this is the second time in my life I've been told to get my affairs in order. So I started some second line chemo, salvage chemo. And the best news we've gotten in that whole time was I got a report that there was a little bit of shrinkage, like George Costanza on Seinfeld's shrinkage. It was regression, little cancer cell regression. So for that, you get more chemo. And then I really dug in deep on the possible other things, clinical trials, other things I should be doing that had science to it. I wasn't looking for the orange juice enema, or coffee or different things. I mean, I just needed science behind it. And there's this surgery called cytoreduction HIPEC. It's basically deboning a fish and pouring hot chemo in there to kill microcell cancer. It's the mother of all surgeries, and you have to qualify for that. And I started to learn about it. And I got into this group, Paltown, that had a HIPEC Heights group. And I was talking to people all over the world, Vincent de Jong in the Netherlands, Kim Sully in Philadelphia. And they were my cancer whisperers. They were ahead of me. They had already had the surgery 1 or 2 times, and they told me all about it. And I was really preparing to go to war. And I had that surgery in March of 2018. And it took me, I mean, it's like running a marathon, being hungover for months and months, not eating. I was a ghost. And
Wow.
I will tell you though, my dog, my little dog, Cody, he had to walk and had to go out. So I would take him further and further. I mean, it was just getting out of bed was a big deal with all the side effects and steroids and the after effects. But my dog, I had to go get the mail, and then I go a little further and a little further. And I basically, like an athlete in training, I was keeping track of what I was able to do and kept pushing myself. I also did some crazy stuff like play chemotherapy and played full court basketball after surgeries, and stuff like that, because I want to push myself and prove that on the basketball court, I didn't feel like a cancer patient. Right. But after that surgery, I did maintenance chemotherapy, and I still do have a chemo port in. I still have maintenance scans every quarter. And the best news ever was September 19th in 2019. I got a scan that read no evidence of disease at this time, called NET.
Wow.
And that's the new modern term for the word remission. And you got to get to 5 years like I did with the first cancer. And that news was great. I even, I was able to kind of breathe a little bit, because recurrence in this surgery, recurrence in colorectal cancer stage 4 is so prominent. And we live in a world of people dying on us all the time, and it's not their choice. The disease gets them, and God above is calling their number to, get their wings. So what I decided to do was become a national advocate and use my voice. So as you said, the other direction, you can kind of be private and you can just resume your life. That's not me. So I've become a national colorectal cancer advocate, because if people get screened, Cologuard, a FIT test, get their colonoscopy, they don't have to go through chemotherapy and surgeries and all the hell that I went through. And I don't wish this on anyone. Yeah. It has been absolute, really tough on my family, emotionally, physically, financially, relationships. My daughter's going through therapy now. My wife is coming off a caregiver into COVID. It's been a rough run for us, but we're strong and we're resilient. And the comeback story, right? Humpty Dumpty back together again, part 2.
Right. So you gain your freedom in September, and then COVID hits. And for a cancer survivor, you're obviously not willing to risk your immune system to perhaps one of the most deadly viruses humanity has known, at least in a long, long time. So you said, well, I've got nothing better to do but write a book.
Well, that didn't work out quite that way. I actually, this gentleman, David Crum, Front Edge Publishing, a dear friend of mine, he runs a communicators group for bloggers and reporters and folks around Michigan. And I built a platform actually called Circle Builder. I had to stop it because I got sick. And it was basically private Facebook for churches and ministries to speak privately with their members and build their membership. And anyways, I met with him and for a coffee, and the first coffee turned into a couple hours. And when I was going to the bathroom a lot, and after that, he said, Howard, you have a really interesting story. You ever thought about writing a book? I said, oh, I'm not a writer. Grammar and punctuation are optional for me. He says, right. No, he goes, let's dictate the book. And I said, we can do that? He said, yeah. And so we met another time for 3 hours at a Bob Evans. We ordered big dinners after because we stood there for so long. And we decided in October of, I think, 19, we started the book, and we started recording every week for at least an hour or two. And we started walking back my life. It was fantastic. Wow. From my great grandmother, Bertha Budish, that came from, we think, Lithuania, Russia, Poland, could have been the Ukraine, had a horrible time trying to get it to this country. So she came through Montreal, and the lesson she taught us as an Orthodox Jewish woman that had nothing, Yeah. And we go to my grandfather that fought in World War II and saw Mussolini hanging by his boots and got shot in the war and built a family, an American dream. And then we talk about my dad, who sold cowboy boots for 47 years. Wow. And they're the original mentor and entrepreneur for me. And then I have a lot of, then Cancer One came about. And then I'm moving forward, but I went to Babson College, #1 school for entrepreneurship. And I came out and I started with NCR, a big computer company, and then did startups in LA and Silicon Valley. And I'm a big brother mentor, lots of great stories in the book. And then Cancer 2 hit. And at the end of the day, my message is for resilience and inspiration and giving back and hope. And without giving away as we say, burying the lead, sharing hope is the last title, because without it, you have darkness. And in darkness, it's hard to navigate in darkness. You bump into things and all that. So this is why Shining Brightly became the book. And it actually started at Babson College. I told the new president they were shining brightly today, and I love the title, and I'm all about shining brightly. So I'm shining brightly with you today, Chris.
Yeah, I love it. It's amazing. And thinking about putting into perspective other people that are going through really hard times, where the world is dark around them. And if it continues to be dark, they're going to give up hope. Like, how am I ever going to find my way out? And they may sincerely want something better. They may not want to live in this depth of depression or anxiety or like those sort of things. And maybe seeing you, which today, maybe back in the 90s, seeing you meant you had to like actually see you or read you in like a newspaper or something. But today, a Facebook post that you make, or like something a medium, like the article that you had written about you, that can go across the world in seconds. And that can be a dim, candle at that point. It's like, okay, this guy survived it. Okay, this guy made it through. Okay, this guy did this. And that could be that small candle, that little spark that will ignite hope, like you mentioned. And hope is probably more contagious than COVID, where once you catch a little bit of it, it's self-perpetuating and self-renewing. And that's the beauty about sharing stories like yours. And we talked about a little bit before we started recording, like this book is not only something for now, but it's a legacy. So your grandkids and great grandkids will be able to read about your story and know you. Like, I don't really know my grandparents, let alone my great grandparents that much, but my kids will know me. My great grandkids will know me because of my book and my stories that I share in there. And so it's cool to have that, and knowing that this is going to be a legacy story that's going to provide hope for people that you're never going to meet, people that live across the pond or across, centuries, perhaps, if you're going to continue to make impact. And I know it inspires me. I know it's going to inspire others. I can't wait to read the book. What would be your parting thought? Let's say it's the last time you're ever going to see somebody. What would you want to tell them? What would you want them to cling to?
I appreciate that. So I would say that this world is meant to not go it alone. It can be an isolating place. And we learned this, and everyone learned this on COVID. I reached out. It's a team sport of life. It's a team sport of beating cancer. It's a team sport of winning games. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I had to be willing to be able to understand that I reached out for mentors. I had cancer whisperers, I had entrepreneurial technology mentors, and I actually pay it forward by mentoring others. I whisper to current cancer patients going through treatment right now and give them hope and experience, and see how they're doing during their day. And the same thing with students at Babson College and other business leaders as well. And lastly, you have to be able to act with kindness. That kindness thing, it's very simple. A nice note to somebody, buy someone a coffee in back of you, the random act of kindness. I think that makes the world a better place. Those three things, and you're off and running.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there a place that people can go to get your book, or a website, or like a pre-order list or anything like that, where they can know more about you? How do people find out your story before the book comes out?
Absolutely. So shiningbrightly.com will be launched very shortly, actually this weekend. And so go there. You'll be able to learn more stories, and you'll be able to interact. Tell me what's inspiring you that day. Share a picture, share a quote, share a meme. I want to interact. I want to know what's making you shine brightly today, but also not ignoring that positivity without action. So I understand you're going to have a bad day. I had plenty of them. But shiningbrightly.com, and the book will be out on Amazon mid-May, late May, hopefully. And then we're going to be off and podcasting and speaking. And I'm just so thrilled you had me on today, Chris.
I'm thrilled to have you. I can't wait to share your story. Thank you so much for joining me. And I can't wait for myself, but and other people to read your book as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Perspective Podcast. To connect with Dr. Bowman, follow him on Instagram @Dr. Chris Bowman. Until next time, make shift happen.